Awesome. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Donnie Boivin here, hanging out with Tim Berry. And, we're trying some new shit out, just trying to see what's going to work. How do we get a message out to the marketplace? And one of the things that I've wanted to do for a long time was to do a lot more like in-person, real, face-to-face, belly-to-belly type stuff, because there's just a different vibe that happens when you bring people together and you break bread in person. So talking to Tim, one of the things we're going to talk a lot about is kind of those early years of sales and some of the shit that we went through and figured out along the way. So if you don't know me, I'm Donnie Boivin, CEO of Success Champions Networking. I'll let Tim do himself and introduce himself. He's kind of an ass, so bear with him as he goes through this. So
kind of. Don't understate it. Jesus, I'm a huge ass. Beautiful. Hi, everybody. Tim Berry with Sandler Training of Fort Worth. Been doing this this is my 10th year, coming up on my 10th year of being in business. Crazy as that sounds.
That's a milestone, man.
That's amazing. I can't believe I survived it.
We just hit 7, so I mean, it means you've taken a beating.
Several beatings, and you know how this is because you started Success Champion Networking 7 years ago. There's ebbs and flows of it too.
It looks like a heartbeat monitor.
Yeah,
you just hope that it's got a little slight more up tilt.
Right.
Yeah,
good stuff. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. So how did you get into sales?
Oh, goodness. So my parents got divorced when I was in 8th grade, and it was, they were super young, and I realized real quickly as I was helping to raise my younger brother and younger sister, I want money. I want things, and not stuff like groceries, but I want like decent clothes,
Right.
And when you come from a lower middle class type of a family, that doesn't have a ton of resources, and those two young parents get divorced, there's not a lot of cash to spread around. So I thought, I'm going to go get a job. So Downers Grove, Illinois, 14 years old, I go into Butera Finer Foods to the produce department, and I'm like, I'd like a job. Now, when I was 14 years old, I looked like I was 9, right? And they're like, get out of here. What are you, kid? We can't hire you until you're 16. And so I decided, I'm going to start a business, 14 years old. Didn't know what. And I was watching TV, and there was a commercial about Mary Maids. And Mary Maids was, and you can't even, it was a cleaning company for residential. I'm like, I can do that for sure. And I opened up underneath the sink in the kitchen, and I'm like, oh, there's the cleaning supplies. I'm like, I'm going to start a cleaning company. And I did. And so that's how my sales career began. I ran around, I rode my bike out to Oak Brook Terrace, the rich part of town, hung a bunch of door hangers on people's, storm doors. And I got a couple of them to bite. And that was literally how I started the sales. So,
man, I fought it for the longest time. I'd had kind of a career, I did the Marine Corps right after high school, came back home, went to work for my best friend and his dad doing HVAC. I hated that. We're in Texas, 110-degree weather, up in attics, and it was just dumb. Took a job up in St. Louis, ended up working for a Fortune 5 Cardinal Health, started off in the mailroom, and worked my way up into a marketing position with the sales team. That was really cool. Got to see some cool things. We sponsored the St. Louis Cardinals, so I got to go to the games and stuff and see all that.
Nice.
Then I came back home to Texas, and I got a bartending gig, and really bartending, I think, was my first sales, gig.
Oh my God, yeah.
Really out there. But the funny thing is I met Elizabeth, my wife, and I knew I needed to get a big boy job again back in corporate America. So I started shoving my resume underneath my bar top. And my brother Keith had been in sales for a number of years and kept trying to tell me, dude, get in sales. And I just didn't want to do it. I thought salespeople were greaseballs. I'm like, I'm not going to do this. Well, eventually, a gal by the name of Jane Miranda literally hired me out from behind the bar to go start in a sales position. Now, the really fucked up part about this, I love Jane to death, greatest boss I ever had, was when she hired me, she was a vice president of this company, okay? It was a commercial printing company. There was a vice president of sales who had 14 sales reps that reported to him. I was now coming in to the vice president of the company and being her sales rep under her digital division.
Wow.
I didn't get any sales training, no sales coaching, no anything. She's handed me a desk and said, there's your phone, go. And here I have this whole sales department with training and structure and everything else. And I'm literally just thrown to the walls and had no clue. But, So everything that I figured out was self-taught along the way.
What part of your military experience did you transfer into that? Like, what instincts did you rely on?
Here's the funny thing for me is not a lot, but let me explain. I went to the military because my oldest brother went to the military, right? I didn't know what the fuck I was going to be. I wasn't going to do college. I wasn't going to, I didn't think the corporate world was ever going to be for me.
Sure.
So I went to the Marine Corps. I knew I fucked up when I got off the bus going to boot camp. You stand on these yellow footprints, and I realized for the next 4 years, people are going to be yelling at me and telling me what to do.
Yeah.
So I tried to stay under the radar as much as possible, but I did my 4 and got the fuck out. I'm very proud that I served my time,
of course,
did my thing, but I've learned more probably in the last 7 years of building a company than I have over all the rest of the years of my entire life.
Yep. It's Veterans Day.
Yep.
So thank you for your service, and to all the veterans out there, we love you. We love you.
And to that, for people that respect and honor Veterans Day, all I want to say is thank you for making it worth it. Right? I didn't do the overseas stuff or anything, but a lot of guys did. And if you go back from the Vietnam era to now, and there's not always a happy, joyous, freaking, welcome home. It's way better than the Vietnam guys ever had it, but thanks for making service worth it, because we went through the suck for quite a while. And trust me, it sucked. Anybody that tells you otherwise, the military was their high school football coach, and they haven't done shit with their life since then.
Yeah. My wife was the German was in the Navy for 8 years, and she loved every second of it, but that's because she's a German stoic farm girl that loves structure and discipline, and
right.
She's still to this day, she irons everything in the house. It's that's why I'm not wrinkled.
Right. So dude, I still can't stand when people tell me what to do. Authority drives me freaking bonkers.
Yeah.
So how did you figure out sales? Me, I was handed a desk and a phone, and they said, go. What was your process of figuring out how to sell?
So as a 14-year-old out there selling, you don't know anything.
Right.
You literally don't know anything. You barely have any hair on your ass at that point. And so for me, all I did was I went to these wealthy homeowners, and I was like, look, if you want your house cleaned, I can come in and do that, because it was very binary, right? You know what clean is or what not clean is. And so I knew how to vacuum the stripes into a carpet correctly and back your way out of it so that it looks magnificent. I knew how to spray Windex and Glad for the wood tables and stuff like that. I knew how to tidy up. And when they would say, well, why should I choose you? I'm like, I'm not really sure you should. But if you do, this is what you're going to get from me. And so in the world that I live in now in Sandler, they call that the dummy curve.
Yep.
You don't know anything about anything. So you just have to sort of be honest and real, and just, you have to ask more questions than give answers. And that's actually what I did when I am able to look back 40 years and look at, how I got in sales. That was it. I didn't know anything, and I didn't pretend. So I was genuine and I was authentic. And that's how that really started. Just asking questions, being curious, and letting the customer talk. That was really the
See, that's
key.
fascinating. You had a courage that I didn't have. The idea of walking into a building, no fucking way, right? Walking into a house, no way. That just wasn't going to be my thing. So for me, I started thinking through, well, who the hell actually buys commercial printing? I remember the first time I walked into a commercial print shop, and the odor of the ink and stuff just blew my mind. And, you eventually come numb to it. But I had to start thinking through, I didn't need somebody's business card to sell that. I had to sell volume.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, who the hell buys, volume? So one of the first original thoughts I had is some people with a lot of SKUs. I had a lot of items to sell.
Right.
So one of my first big deals that I ever ended up closing was Hawk Electronics, and they had a ton of SKUs. But to get to Hawk Electronics, I went through a lot of these mom and pop shops, a lot of these really small things.
Yep.
And God, they were a pain in the ass, right? Because I was constantly having to, call them up, and then all the orders where they'd have issues, they'd have problems with it. So I'm like, I wonder if they're going after the bigger companies. But once I figured out that, people with lots of SKUs did a lot of printing, then it was a lot of hammering damn phones. But the first time I ever cold called, the only way I could do it, I got drunk as shit so I could pick up the phone and actually start making calls, because the phone just scared the crap out of me. And I love telling the story that the first person who ever picked up the phone for me on the other end, I hung up on them because I was so scared that they actually picked up the phone.
It's fun. The cold calling piece is the thing that most salespeople struggle with. When you're brand new in sales and you don't have a sales pipeline, you've got to bang the phones. You've got to be on LinkedIn. You've got to, be at networking events. You've got to be introducing yourself. And
100%.
just having conversations is actually the goal. I think the misnomer is that you've got to sell on the cold call. It's not it at all.
And I think the struggle comes from most people, whether they start a company or they get into sales, the only sales they've experienced is things that they've bought.
Yes.
Right. So they bought cars, houses, insurance. Right. And so everything is this transactional nature. And they're trying so hard not to come across transactionally that they ended up start spewing all the features and benefits of their company, which makes them come across like that hard sell guy, not knowing that sitting back, getting more curious. But, a lot of these people don't even know how to get to the end sales call. They're 100% just relying on networking, and then figuring out why they say, hell, could they not get enough business? They have no outbound strategy going. They have no LinkedIn strategy going. They're not getting on stages and doing workshops. So they hit all the happy hours. They hit all the freaking, lunch meetings and whatnot. And they're just meeting a bunch of other salespeople and business owners that are also networking. They're not proactively outside of the network trying to go get business.
That's always been my criticism of other networking platforms, chambers of commerce. You've got this nice group of people, but they're all salespeople that don't have bleeding, pipelines that are producing fruit. And the challenge with that is that then everybody's in it for themselves. Everybody's trying to sell. Let me tell you about what I do type stuff. And I say this, you've heard me say this, nobody cares about you, your product, your company, your service, your mother, your ferret. Nobody cares about any of that stuff. Your prospect cares about what they care about.
100%.
And so curiosity, genuine curiosity on the part of the salesperson is where you begin to have better conversations. I even learned that I've demonstrated and watched it happen in SCN, which I think, by the way, is the greatest networking group I've ever even heard of. But having genuine conversations with people, even today, I noticed that when I'll set up a one-on-one, I'll ask most of the questions, and we will never get to in the 30 minutes what the heck it is I do. And that's okay, because it's almost like I'm training, my SCN brothers and sisters. Tell me what you do, but then leave time, make sure, be clock aware of your shot clock. If it's a 30-minute session, don't be shooting shots for 28 of them and go, oh, what the heck do you do?
Well, yeah, and it's so funny because most people look at their networking as 100% their prospecting. So that means there's a hint of every conversation. They're hoping the person goes, you know what, I've really been looking for your services. Not understanding that they're typically selling to a bunch of other salespeople, right? Or they're dealing with business owners who are networking because they don't want to do the cold calls and the like. So they're aiming and targeting to a lot of people who haven't really gotten after it and built a big business. And so everything becomes this act of desperation because somebody's got to say, yes, I'm looking for your services, or they don't know how to get business in general.
Right. Yeah, and you do run out of people in the networking
you
group.
Totally churn through your network fast as shit.
Well, and you can go to different, you go to different groups, but if you see all the same people, it's just seeing the same people at different groups. It doesn't change the fact that you haven't talked to anybody net new, and that's really what it is. It's a churn and burn. It's a churn and burn process. You've got to talk to tons of people.
100%. How did you learn to ask questions, not only in the virtual coffees, in-person coffees, but on sales calls? How did that part? Because, I don't know if you ever knew this. For you guys that don't know, I sold Sandler for 7 years and then met Tim, and I love the Sandler system and the way they sell. I just love the steps that they teach. But that was the first time I ever got a formal sales training is when I sold sales training.
Yep. Guilty is I'm with you on that one. In my world, I owned a bunch of construction companies. An innate ability to read people, profile them, and then mirror and match really quickly. I'm good at building trust and drawing people in. That was a natural thing for me. That it just happens automatically. But the questioning side of things was more out of necessity. My mindset was always, I don't have something that's out of the box for you. I don't have an out of the box solution. I don't know exactly what you need. Here's my toolbox. Here's my whole locker full of stuff that I could sell you, but I don't know if you need any of it. So let me ask you those questions. So that the answer to your question is, I have all this stuff, but I don't know if any of it fits you. So why don't you tell me what you actually like and want and need, and then I'll figure out if I can custom build a solution for you. That's how I don't know if that's
no, it does. It does.
It's
funny is as I was trying to teach myself sales doing commercial printing, I ran across some old like Zig Ziglar shit and some of the old guys, and I don't remember who was teaching, but they were teaching you should have a presentation book, right?
Yeah.
So I built a 3-ring binder, right? Put all the pamphlets and brochures into it, right?
Flip.
And I remember being on these print sales calls, and I'm literally trying to walk them through. And one day I looked around the room, that guy, every brochure that I'm like showing that we can do, he's got like hundreds of them on his wall. The guy I'm trying to sell to, like, I'm trying to convince him that he needs these freaking brochures. And then so I was starting to get to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't need a stupid binder. But I hadn't had the courage to leave it alone because I didn't know what to do next. I was going to a sales call, and I ended up leaving the binder in my office on accident. And I'm like, shit, I'm halfway there. So I got a choice. I can get there on time, or I go back and get the binder, and I'm going to be late. Yep. And I decided to go ahead. And I remember sitting in front of the guy, and I go, I have to apologize, but I usually have a sales presentation. I left it at home, and I honestly don't know what to say next. And he goes, why don't you ask me a question?
Awesome.
And my first question was, do you buy commercial printing? He goes, in volumes.
Which is a great question.
Yeah, dude, it totally is. I actually started using that in my cold calls later on. All the tricks and tips that I learned in cold calling, my favorite one at work was, do you guys ever do any commercial printing? And if they say, yeah, they're like, can I get number 4 on the list? Right? Can you just add me to the list? And if somebody fucks up, I'll come in. But
for sure.
Yeah, I totally learned how to start asking questions by literally forgetting the binder and had literally no pen, the cell phone in my pocket, but there was nothing I could show this person. So the only thing we could do is have a conversation.
But you had mentioned Zig Ziglar. I remember back in the day, I had a 1989 Honda Accord DX manual maroon, brand new as
Peyton, that's a stick shift.
Yes, manual. It was the first new car that I ever bought, and it had a cassette tape. And I remember buying Earl Nightingale.
Yes, the series
sales tapes, and then I also had one from Zig Ziglar. And the one quote that I remember of all of them was Zig Ziglar said in his Southern drawl, "Sellin' ain't tellin', askin' is." And I was like, what the heck does that mean?
I don't have no idea what the hell you just said.
Sellin' ain't tellin'.
Askin' is. Got it.
And I was like, wow. The odd thing is that the more information you gather, and this is how I really think sales has to be. If it's true that no prospect cares about you, your product, your service, your company, or your mother, and they only care about what they care about, then the only way you understand that is by asking questions.
100%.
And so having a couple talk tracks, and this is where Sandler comes in, because Sandler taught me the beauty of figuring out what is the issue that you're talking about, why is that issue occurring, and then what's the emotional impact? Like, why does it even really matter?
Right.
And the art form of having that fluid conversation, that's where Sandler weaponized me and turned me into a monster. So
I like that you said weaponized me, because that's kind of,
Grandpa Don says these stories are eye-opening, thanks for sharing. I know I'm one of those networking is some sort of prospecting person. He goes, even at my advanced age, I know I will learn how to do this better. I just have to get there.
that boy.
Yeah.
Attaboy. Thanks, Grandpa.
Don's a great
He's good,
storyteller
dude.
too. I love
He
that
is
guy.
a great storyteller. The props to Sandler in overall. I mean, I really love the fact that you said it weaponized you, because what I think Sandler did for me is took a lot of the things I was already doing and put it in a system, right?
Codified it.
Yeah. I mean, it gave me, it smoothed out some of my rough edges, because I was doing a lot of the things, but I didn't understand why I was doing them, right?
Yep.
I didn't understand why I was asking for budgets and why I was trying to find pain points, and all these things. And I think there was a lot of light bulb moments for me because, when you talk about the decision step in Sandler, I'm like, how many times did I get burned because I was selling to the wrong guy,
Yep.
and things like that. So it really helped me grow up in my overall sales, all of it. The one thing I wish Sandler would focus more on is the prospecting on the front end.
Yeah.
Right. They focus so much on the sales call that there's a big gap. I think the universal sales trainers in general is they focus on what happens when you get there. They don't focus a lot of time and energy, on how do you actually get to the sales call.
Yep.
I like the fact that you spend a lot of time.
Well, I'm gonna do. Here's just a mini plug because there's nothing in stone yet. But I'm gonna do an actual prospecting workshop. What to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, and why to do it. I'm going to run one of those at the end of January. I think that it's important because you can talk sales theory all you want, and sales is an art form. That's
100%.
the Sandler process for sure. But the tactical piece of what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, that's what I'm going to teach in this workshop. It's going to be just a half day, little quick $99 deal. So we'll do that in January when we get past the holidays and everybody has their head pulled out of their butts.
Beginning of January, where everybody's like, okay, here's my New Year's resolution. I'm going to sell more.
Yeah.
Great spot.
Perfect time to do it.
Right.
Especially for something cheap and quick. So
yeah. I think honestly early on sales intimidated the hell out of me because the idea of, okay, I have to not only find a company that is looking or interested or already uses services like I sell. I've got to introduce myself, somehow get into a conversation with them for them to go, okay, I trust him enough to throw business his way.
Right.
Then I got to not fuck up that business so I can keep that business. And by the way, I got to go back and get more.
Yep.
It was such a fucked up way to think about. People actually do this on a regular basis, and that's how they grow their business.
My strategy was get them to like me and trust me, and then I'll have them. It's like snagging a largemouth bass, right? You set that hook, but not in the lip. You make sure that it's in its aorta, and then you rip it out. And that's the little graphic. Sorry, guys, but that's my nature. So
I go back to how I thought about salespeople was, at that point I'd bought cars, I'd bought insurance, everything was so transactional. So I thought that's how you had to be, not understanding that I could go in and just try and understand, are they actually interested? Can I really help them? Right. And the more you got on the side of the eight ball of, you don't know if they're a good fit for you out the gate, conversation became a lot smoother, a lot less transactional. And I didn't get thrown out of so many doors, but I did get thrown out a couple of doors from time to time.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that's normal.
Right.
You're all salespeople. That's one of the things we have to be resilient about is you don't know when you're picking up a phone and they say, screw you and hang up on you or whatever. They're not mad at you. They're just mad at whatever circumstances happening in their life, right?
And 9 times out of 10, you could literally give it 30 minutes, call back, and they have no idea who you are.
You could call 20 seconds later and they wouldn't even know it for sure.
Yeah.
And so you've got to develop that thick skin of, I don't know. There's an old Native American saying, walk a mile. You can't understand a man until you walk a mile in their moccasins.
Right.
And it's 100% true. So you don't know what got under that person's, what burr got under that person's saddle. So don't take it personal because again, 30 seconds later you could call and you can be like, do a little falsetto voice and hello, and they'd never know it was you anyway. Because
I found that out calling and getting hit up with the gatekeepers. And so I call the gatekeeper of a bigger company. I mean, like, who handles all your commercial printing? And they're like, well, that's Sam Smith. And I say, cool, thank you. Or can I get the email of Sam? Yep. And then I turn around, hang up, call right back, and go, is Sam there? Yeah. And I just use, and they had no clue who it was that was calling, through that. So I would challenge that most people that are out networking don't know who their ICP is. Like, they have no clue who their ideal perfect client is. I figured mine out through, who would buy large volumes of printing. And then Sandler, I figured out, who would have high volumes of salespeople with lots of turnover, right? Which is always a great place for us. How did you discover your ICP over the years?
In the beginning with the house cleaning, it was the rich people.
Yeah, makes sense.
Broke people don't hire house cleaners. And so for me, it was, ride my bike 6 or 7 miles to the rich side of town. And then that was my target market. And I've actually followed that most of the time. There's plenty of money and plenty of revenue to be made in the different socioeconomic strata, but the ones that invest in themselves usually have the most money. And so I'm looking for affluence as a general rule. And it doesn't mean that I discriminate in any way, shape, or form on people that don't,
right.
But there is a mindset difference. There's the old saying is that the rich get richer.
Yep.
And that is actually true. And when you're in those circles, they do have a secret handshake, if you will. They do tell each other the secrets. Here's the business tip. Those things happen on purpose because success attracts success. And so too many times I've seen small business owners play to not lose. I think of the Chicago Bears. I've always used the Chicago Bears as a dumpster fire of an organization. It's the second most valuable franchise on the planet, or at least in the NFL, but they constantly play to not lose. And as a result, they never really actually win. Versus a team like the Kansas City Chiefs or the 49ers, where they're constant. There's an expectation.
The Cowboys 40 years ago.
Yeah, 40 years, definitely 40 years ago. But the playing to not win is a real problem for a small business owner, and it's a self-limiting belief. All right. Now the business owners that have the world is my oyster, Tony Montana from Scarface.
Oh, yeah.
The world is your oyster. That's the mentality that I'm looking for, because I don't want people that are going to constantly make excuses for why they're scared or why they can't. It's not that they don't wrestle with it. It's everybody is scared and everybody has that self-doubt. But
yeah, no, you're spot on.
What's up, Aiden?
You got another one?
They're asking, can you talk about the sandwich system? What should the sales process look like? What should it look like?
What should the sales process look like? So the Donnie, you know this as well as anybody. The traditional way of selling is that the prospect has a system. They're trained like ninjas to defend themselves against salespeople. When was the last time you went into like a furniture store or went to buy a vehicle?
Dude, as soon as you walk through the door, first thing you need, the dude with the clipboard comes running up to you.
Oh yeah.
And our first response is,
Can I help you?
You're like, no, just looking.
Right? And so the challenge is that the prospect does have a mechanism to defend themselves. And with this process, there's 4 steps to it. The first step is that they feign interest in the salesperson, and the salesperson is all excited, like, oh, this is great. They're asking me questions and they're really curious. But here's what happens is the prospect steals that information, we call it free consulting. They avoid making any commitments, and then they ghost the salesperson. That's the 4 steps of the prospect system. Now, traditional sales is you look around the room for any bit of information. Oh, I love your salt and pepper shaker, Jeff. It's amazing. Oh, I love you golf? I can't believe you golf. I golf too. Can we be friends? And so they feign any interest to find a commonality. The second thing they do is, because the traditionally trained salesperson is excited and they're nervous, They start talking about what they know best, which is them and their product and the features and the benefits of their stuff. That's the second piece. Now, then they go into objection overcoming mode, and then they have to chase. So those are the 4 steps. Look for interest, present, overcome objections, and then you have to chase. The Sandler process is completely different because what I shared before was Zig Ziglar, selling ain't telling, asking is. The idea is the salesperson goes in, is genuinely curious, builds deep, meaningful trust quickly, and then spends the rest of the call qualifying that person in or out of doing business with them. So you gain equal business stature, and therefore you get permission to ask really good, deep, meaningful questions. Now, this requires that you slow down. It's like when you land in an airplane, as soon as you hit the tarmac, the air brakes go up and you reverse thrust, right? So the salesperson tends to want to and keep going. That's not it at all. That's shut up and ask a lot of great questions, because the information you're gathering is what's helping you customize a solution or not from them. So great online question, but that's what it is. There's intellectual sales training, and then there's the art form of executing sales, and I teach both. Right. There is a structure, and there's an artful way of doing it, and you cannot have one without the other. You can't just know it in theory and then just go out and do it. You have to practice it and practice it. It's like anything. I say this in my classes all the time. Don't practice this until you get it right. You practice this until you can't get it wrong. Yeah. So
and the ideology behind Sandler that is always always held the strongest belief for me was, I was brought up in it that you focus on disqualifying versus qualifying, because if you will stay on the side of, do they have enough money? Can they make a decision, right? Is there a real need? Like, is this a solution they actually want to solve, right? They will tell you everything along the way. And if you focus too hard on qualifying them, like you're trying to put them in all these boxes, right? You start almost forcing the questions, you get a lot of false evidence, right?
Yep. 100%.
So, but when you start taking it away, they really start leaning in. And I think that was probably one of the greatest tools that Sandler gave me, was to be able to sit across from somebody, ask the right damn questions, which I think is the strongest skill of any salesperson on the planet, because we all like the sound of our voice, but if we're doing all the damn talking, right, nothing's happening.
100%.
So if we can ask the right damn questions, we uncover all the crap we need to uncover, and it becomes a really, really good, thought process. Because when dealing with prospects, we're dealing with their head trash as much as we're dealing with ours, right? They've had a lot of bad salespeople before you in there having those conversations. So you're going to be guilty already of what other bad salespeople have done. So you have to completely change the format in the game and earn that trust by coming at it from a completely different perspective.
100%. There's a concept that I try to help my clients get in their head. You go in neutral, and in the beginning of the sales call, a typical salesperson, they really want that sale. Mm-hmm. They own that sale. But there needs to be at some point, and this is why Sandler is so brilliant, because there is an actual process point at which you flip ownership from the salesperson to the prospect. And once you do that, you feel it, it, because now they're defending, justifying, and explaining why they're going to work with you, not the other way around.
Yep.
Hey.
What are some questions that at the beginning of a meeting you can use to gain trust?
Well, there's a ton. For me, the first thing you have to do of every sales call is you got to set the stage. What's going to happen, right? What's the conversation going to play out? So early on questions there could be is, why did you actually invite me in, right? What are you hoping to accomplish in this meeting? What do you need to get out of this meeting? What can I help you uncover? What things do you need to know about me to determine if we're even going to be a good fit here or not? Or just some of the early stage ones.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge piece. It's an absolutely winning strategy. the idea of building a mutually agreed upon agenda before you have a meeting is awesome. Think about the last time you've gone to the dentist, right? You're laying back in this chair, you got this bright lights in your face, you got $80,000 of stainless steel tools and hacksaws and jackhammers next to your face. And what's the very first thing the dentist does when they come in? They sit down, they pat you on the arm, and they're like, okay, here's what to expect. And what happens physiologically is, sitting in that chair, your blood pressure decreases, your heart rate decreases, you start to relax and chill out. All of that anxiety and fear about what's to come goes away. And that's what Sandler is for. That's what you're talking about, is build that mutually agreed upon agenda, because then there's no surprises. It's not like a first date where you're kind of like, everybody on a first date is the best version of themselves. Nobody's going to be like, I'm a psychotic stalker. There's going to be a rabbit in your pot. There's there's not going to be, you're not going to wake up with a dead horse head. They're never going to say that on a first date. You find that out later, but when you take the pressure off, everybody relaxes. When you can be present with your prospect instead of like doing sales to them, when you're just like, hey, I'm not really sure if there's a fit. Let's have a cool conversation and figure out if there is, or if there's not. If there's not, that's okay too. We can part as friends, and that's the end. Yeah. And so that's what I love about Sandler.
Yeah. In addition to that, some of the favorite things I like to ask people is, would look at their LinkedIn profile, see their career path. And as I sat down, I would go, and I usually would have memorized some notes to go in there. I'm like, okay, you were at this company at this point, you were at this company at this point, you're at this company at this point. I'm like, that tells me what you've done on LinkedIn. Would you mind sharing me the actual story of your journey? How did you get here? And what'd be amazing is you knew what type of person it was. Like your high C's, they're going to go, well, I did this and this and this, and now we're here, right? Yep. Your high D's, they don't even give a shit. They're like, can we talk business, right? But your I's and S's, all of a sudden you're getting a story. And that story is going to give you so much information that you're going to be able to unpack later. What I think happens to salespeople is, as soon as the person starts talking, they hear one thing and they're like, oh, I got it, I can fix that. And so they immediately jump in and go, let me share with you all my things and all the stuff I can do with you. And they still haven't yet to qualify the person to whether they can actually solve their thing. And they're just focused on, how do I sell my single fucking widget to this person right now? Yeah.
They're leaning in for the kiss, and at the same time saying, let's get married.
I love that. That's really what it is. It's the first day you sit down, you order cocktails, you're like, you ready to go home yet? It's mind-boggling, but it's all because of that nervous energy. In some situations, they dogfight it out to get the conversation originally, and they're like, and then they don't have anything else in their pipeline. So this conversation has to last, or they don't pay their bills. And so everything counts on this moment, and they just bring it all and vomit all over it.
Yep. It's an abundance mindset versus the scarcity one. Yeah. And when you have an abundance mindset, you can slow yourself down, have genuine, real integrity conversations, like real curious ones. And you're okay with the no as well as the yes. Like for me, I'm okay hearing no, because then I don't have to worry about chasing that person around. And so no is fine. No is fine, because it saves me time and energy to talk to people that I can actually talk to. Peyton.
That moves us into the next one, is talk about handling objections.
So here's the thing. If you're getting objections, it's because you fucked up somewhere in the sales call. There's no overcoming objection. And any idiot that teaches that shit is a transactional bastard that shouldn't be teaching sales, okay? Overcoming objections came about when you had people that were selling one-off things. So it was a one-off service, a car, copier, right? Because that conversation was the only conversation they were going to get. They were never going to get into a multi-tiered conversations all the time. So they had to overcome objections. What that led to is building a world where everybody learned how to not even put out objections, because they knew you were going to defend against it. So it completely eliminated a good for all. If you get objections, it's because you fucked up and made them uncomfortable somewhere. You said something, you told them something, or they have already decided you're not going to be a fit, and they just don't want to tell you and hurt your damn feelings. Okay? So if you're getting objections, it's not about overcoming the objections. It's about falling on the damn sword and literally saying, gosh, I'm sorry. I really blew this somehow. I'm not really sure how we went from such a adult conversation to right now that you're telling me whatever insert objection is. Can you help me understand where I screwed up in this conversation? Because that's the only reason you got an objection is you threw oil into the water and convoluted everything up. There's no other reason you're going to get hit with objections other than you made them uncomfortable, right? And it drives me nuts that people try and so hard to overcome objections, right? Get better at the sales conversation so you don't get objections in the first place, right? Like, and if you do get like the same objection over and over keeps popping up, start bringing that fucking thing up in the first place and literally talking about it before it becomes a damn objection. And so if price is always an issue, you literally say, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily have a budget set aside for this. Should we talk about that now so it doesn't become something that we have to dance with later, right? Put it on the table.
Yep. No, I agree. All the things that come up as objections should have been covered in the honest conversation. Yep. And this is why it's important to take your time, you know, listen to people. When the salesperson feels something is off, when there might be like a wince that the prospect, like, step into it, right? Because that's the time to do it. You know, in the Sandler process, there's 7 steps. You go through building trust, gaining equal business stature, having a great, deep, paying conversation, talking about budget and the decision-making session step before you ever present even a single thing, right? And by the time you get to, most of the time, I never have to present anything.
Yep.
My question at the end of the decision step is literally this: where do we go from here?
I always said, what do we do next?
What do we do next? And you let them choose. Now, if they have some clarification questions,
all day long.
Cool, perfect. But a hardcore objection, if you did the artful execution of the sales process, you dealt with that during the course of the conversation of building trust, gaining upfront contract, paying budget decision, that all came out and was dealt with before.
I'd also like to know, Peyton, if they'll answer this, when are they getting the objection? Is it on the cold call up front, because you will get objections there, or is it in the actual sales call itself?
That's a great question.
Because it's easy to be on a cold call. Somebody goes, I already got a guy, right? We already have somebody else we use for that service. That's a legit. They're trying to one, get you off the phone, but they're also trying to tell you, you know, they're already dealing with somebody.
Yep.
And my favorite, we already got a guy. Cool. How do I become number 3, number 4 on the freaking list?
Yep.
Right. I just want to get the shot at, especially if it's a bigger deal. But if they're getting in the sales call, they're screwing up in the sales call. If they're getting it in the prospecting side of things.
Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah.
Objection is usually on price.
Then they haven't provided enough value, and they don't understand so if we think about sales from this perspective, 9 times out of 10, people have this number in their head, what they think your stuff is worth or how much money they would spend on it. If we get to a place and we're constantly too high, it could be an industry thing, right? That's a real thing if you're in a very commodity-driven marketplace. If you're not in a commodity-driven marketplace, then you didn't uncover a real value for them, what their budget really was, how much they were willing to spend to put out this fire. And part of our job is to help them discover how big the flames actually are so that the money isn't actually all that big of a deal.
Yeah, to build on that, Donnie, the price is going to have to be a percentage of the visceral emotional pain that you uncovered in the conversation. And the idea with Sandler is you've got to get that prospect, you've got to work with them to discover their own pain, and then you've got to make them qualify and quantify what that is. You've got to put a dollar amount in terms of time, money, and resources. What is this costing you? What is this problem costing you? And What's it going to cost you if you don't fix it? Right? That's the negative side of that, the negative reverse side of that. And if they don't have a number to it, if they don't say that, hey, this problem is costing me whatever a lot is to them, if it could be $500, it could be $5 million. If they don't put a number to it, you don't know, you're just sort of guessing.
Yeah.
Right? So when I'm sitting down with CEOs and business owners and they're telling me about missing earnings or they're not, the sales pipeline isn't producing enough fruit, if I start fixing, I don't know how big the nut is, and I don't know if it means anything to them at all.
Yeah,
right?
because you have to put it in perspective, right? They say this is costing them $1 million. Well, if they're a freaking $400 billion company, $1 million is not.
Yeah, it's a rounding error.
Yeah,
it's right. I talked to one guy who said, "Oh, this problem's costing me $4 million." Now, I was early in my Sandler career, and I almost had a heart attack. I'm like, "Geez,
I found one.
I can do it for 10% of that. I can solve this problem." And I was like bursting at the seams. But it was a $20 billion company, so $4 million was a rounding error. And now the funny part is they ended up calling me back when they missed earnings, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, remember that $4 million thing that I didn't care about? I care about it now." And I was like, "All right." That's when you set that hook deep, and you're like, "Oh yes."
Yeah. So the objection though, it's too much. There's just so many moving parts in there. You didn't provide value. You didn't uncover enough, right? You did not actually understand their world deep enough, and likely, I don't want to try and assume too much. Try and be nice about this. You made too many assumptions without proving the facts and made an offer way before you should have ever put an offer on the table. So one of the things to keep in the back of your hat is when somebody brings up price early in the conversation, question it, get curious. Like if you're 5 minutes in the call and they're already saying, what's this going to cost? If you drop a number right then and there, you lose. Right. So question, and simply say is, hey, we're so early in the conversation. I honestly could give you some numbers, but if I do, it's not going to be aligned with anything you need because I literally don't know enough about your world to actually give you a solution. And I don't want to do that because I don't know if I can help you yet. And I need to go through some sort of discovery to understand, can I actually solve your company's issues? Or do you guys even have issues at all that I could deal with? We constantly are putting ourselves in a situation that if they're asking about money, if they're asking about what our services are, they're asking about anything that we think that's some sort of buying signal, and really they don't know how to buy. So part of our sales process is to teach them how to buy our stuff and buy it in our terms. You're getting, caught up in what other bad salespeople did for you, and they know if I say out the gate price is too high, you're out of the call, and they can move on with their life.
Yep, I think cardinal sin that salespeople do is they make too many assumptions, right? Somebody says, "Oh, your price is too high." The real first question should be, "Well, compared to what?" Right? Or when they bring out, "Hey, what's your price?" This is how I'll usually deflect or move through this. I'll say, "Be happy to give you a price. I'm not really positive what I'd give you a price on yet. I do have a process where I've got to ask some questions. I'm going to customize a solution for you, and I'm going to make sure that it fits what you want and need, and make sure that it fits your budget and your time frame. But I can't give you the price because it could be $500, it could be $500,000, it could be everything in between. So my biggest fear is that I'd be giving you a general price that's going to immediately turn your ears off and your mind off and prevent us from moving forward." So is it okay if I ask some questions first? And almost every time they will be like, yeah, okay, fine.
And in a commodity-driven market, like if you're like commercial printing was commodity-driven, right? So if you're in a marketplace where everybody's got the same equipment, everybody's got the same ink, same paper, and everything else, the only differentiator is you, really, at the end of the day. So I always love to, instead of trying to force the conversation to get me into a bidding war where I know I'm going to have to fight for the bottom, is let me get 3 or 4 on your list. If you can put me number 3 or number 4 on your list, what is the criteria somebody ahead of me has to screw up that would give me the shot to come in and talk to you. And I remember I did that with Home Depot when I landed them as account. It took me 4 years to land Home Depot.
Nice.
Right? First call I went in, I said, dude, I got nothing to sell you. I'm a rookie in there. I'm a year into selling printing. Ain't no way in hell you're going to give me any sort of printing. And he laughed. I said, dude, how do I become number 4 or 5 on the list? He goes, how about I put you at number 5? I'm like, I'm good. And then I spent 4 years, every 30 days, driving by, talking about the family, talking about the kids. I didn't ask for printing, nothing. About 4 years in, the fucker calls me up and goes, how quick can you get to my office? I said, I'll be there in a jiffy, right? Drive in. I walk through the door. He throws a postcard. It hits me in the chest. He goes, can you print 2 million of those? I'm like, yes, I can. When do you need them? And it was like 72 hours, something deadline. I remember calling the president of my company. I'm like, Jim, move the presses. He's like, what? I'm like, Home Depot just threw me 2 million freaking postcards. Move the presses, right? But it took 4 years of not trying to pitch, not trying to sell, but in a commodity-driven market, you need to create the milk run where you have all these key accounts you're trying to go after, and you nurture them over time, because oftentimes it takes the vendor in front of you screwing shit up. And that's what happened in Home Depot, is they totally misprinted a whole batch of cards and they sent them out. So Home Depot got charged all that postage and everything. So it just opened up a hole for me to come climb into.
That leads me to something else that's worth talking about, and that's the different levels and statuses of salespeople. So there's 5 levels of status people. The bottom 2 are problem solver or vendor, right? And those are just commodity driven. You are never going to be anything other than a price to those people who are looking at you, the salesperson, as a problem solver or a vendor. The third strongest one is when you're a consultant. And what that means is that at least your prospect is going to come to you and say, what do you think?
Right.
They're going to at least a little bit listen to you. And this is where there's a higher level, there's at least a rudimentary relationship. If you're thinking about like the Olympics, this is your bronze medal relationship, right? The second one, the second status, the silver medal relationship for a salesperson is when you're a business advisor or business partner. And that's when they're really prices starting to fall back, because they're customizing solutions with you. But the gold standard, the gold medal position as a salesperson is a trusted advisor. And this is where price, when you look at the studies, price is about the 6th or the 7th thing that comes to mind. When you have a trusted advisor that you're relying on, you're getting invited to
that's when you get the phone calls. Yeah.
Like, I need this 2 million, get it done, and they don't talk about price at all. It's just get it done, because they know, they trust you implicitly. You are embedded into the culture of their organization. That is when you know, and mind you, you have to continue to earn that position as a trusted advisor, because guess what? Your competitors they're still the bottom feeders. They're number 5 position, right? They're the problem solver. Hey, if Donnie screws this up with the commercial printing, how do I get to be the new number 5? That's what they're going for. And so you've got to continually re-earn that trust and that position as a trusted advisor. And again, even when you're embedded in the culture, you can never take anything for granted. And
Absolutely.
It's a losing proposition to take things for granted.
100%. Do you have another question? Or?
No, Robert Block was saying, who says jiffy?
Tell Robert to kiss my ass. That's awesome.
Good times.
That's awesome. How are we doing on time? What time is it? I don't even know.
It is 12:54.
Cool.
Coming up on an hour.
Yeah, so we'll kind of bring it into a close. This is fun. I don't know how many people end up watching, but
We had 12.
nice. That's a good day.
Cool.
So we may keep doing some more of these.
Let me do a plug for Martha's. So we're holding this at Martha's Mexican Cocina. It's at 4204 Heritage Trace in Fort Worth. It is an amazing.
I'm fixing to order lunch, so
it's an unbelievable place. Martha is an actual person. She's an immigrant that came here as a little kid. All of the food here is authentic, 100-year-old family recipes. Danny works. Alex is in the kitchen. Her son Danny is in the kitchen. This is the best Mexican food that I can imagine.
nice.
And I love these people. So that's when I asked Martha. I said I came in here on Friday. I'm like, hey, Martha, can we run a podcast in here? She's like, oh my God, that'd be awesome. So whatever you do, if you want good Mexican food and unbelievable margaritas, come to Martha's Mexican Cocina in Fort Worth.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How do people get in touch with you?
Go to LinkedIn. Tim Barry, Barry, executive coach, is who you can look up. Email me at tim.barry@sandler, SANDLER.com. Those are the two easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Nice. Don't get a hold of me. I don't want to hear from you. I'm kidding. You guys know where to find me. So, but this is a lot of fun. I'm actually contemplating doing this as more of a series, bringing in a bunch of people through and maybe tie it to a happy hour so there's a big audience type thing. So, in some fun conversations, decide if that want to do it. So, I want to hear from you guys. If we did more fireside chats, things like this, and maybe turn it into a happy hour, would you guys be into this as something different that's not being done in the DFW Metroplex for sure, and streaming it out for other people to log in? So let me know. I'd really love to hear that. So I guess with that, we will get rocking and rolling, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the questions. And if you guys ever need anything, reach out and say hi.
Thank you.
Love you, mean it. See you. Bye.
Ciao.